You're watching the JJ Podcast.
Ted O'Brien is the federal member for Fairfax on Queensland's Sunshine Coast and is the Deputy Opposition Leader and Shadow Treasurer of Australia. First elected to Parliament in 2016, he has built a reputation for his focus on economic growth, energy policy and job creation. Today, Ted talks with us about his leading role in shaping Australia's economic future to better support everyday Australians and their families.
Well, Ted O'Brien, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. While you're in Sydney, come and do the JJ podcast. I just want to get straight into it. Yeah, sure. And let's just talk about, for me personally, I'm constantly concerned about the direction that Australia is heading in terms of our economy. There's always headlines about how we're on target to reach $1 trillion in debt by the end of this year and $1.2 trillion by the next election. Can you just explain to our listeners the severity of this debt and the impact it's going to have on the future generations to come?
So, thanks for having me, by the way. I'm really excited about having the chat. I think the starting point before we get to debt, if you like, is just why is the economy so important? And why do people like me and my colleagues in the Liberal Party always talk about the economy? Yeah. And it's basically because the economy isn't the end game. All it is it's the means towards the end. So it's the means by which we can have roads and rail and modern infrastructure. It's the means by which people can have jobs, careers, opportunities. It's the means by which we can build the hospitals. We can have the nurses and the teachers and the doctors. Everything comes back to the strength of the economy. Mm-hmm. And as we then look towards the future, as we should, as parents in particular, we should be thinking of the next generation. We've got to be saying, so how do we build a strong economy so the next generation have maximum optionality in terms of what they want to pursue, so that they can have a country which is prosperous, a country that is strong in a really volatile geostrategic environment, and a country that is fiercely independent. How do we do that? How do we not do that? So this now takes me to debt, right? One of the ways you do not do that is saddle that next generation with too much debt. Yeah. And that is what is happening, because we will be hitting soon $1 trillion of debt. We are likely to be hitting around about 1.2 trillion by the time we go to the next election. So what this means, you and I probably won't be paying for this stuff, but it limits the optionality for the next generation. We are saddling them with the debt. And it is just selfishness, is what it is. Yeah. As a mum, as a dad, the last thing you want to do is basically go on a spending spree and leave your kids to pick up the bill later in life. Yeah. But that is precisely what we are doing at the moment under this government, because they can't stop the spending spree. That's the big problem. It's a moral issue as much as it is an economic one.
One of the things I heard you say recently was that with this spending spree, the government are actually spending $16,000 a year more per household now than when the coalition were last in government. But I don't think there's many households in Australia that can actually feel like they have, that they're getting 16,000 more.
Precisely.
Cost of living is outrageous and our standard of living is down. So how is that possible? What's the money going on?
So firstly, you're right on a few of these things. One, our standard of living has dropped more than any other developed nation. I mean, think about that. This is Australia, for crying out loud. Our day-to-day life is falling in terms of our standard of living, right? And we do have people struggling over the last few years. I mean, insurance is up over about 35%, electricity 39%, gas 38%. Everything keeps going up. So cost of living crisis, families are struggling. And then you say, well, okay, what's the government doing? We know households are living within their means, which is what you do. Yeah. And there are different ratios you look at for that, like savings to income. Families are living within their means, right? But government, they are spending like there's no tomorrow. So going to that statistic, Jaimie, $160 billion is the additional spend of the government this financial year compared to just over 3 years ago when the coalition was there. Right? $160 billion. Now, there are two parts of spending. One part can be the pressures of the budget. So, aged care, NDIS, these sorts of things which continue to build up pressure. But then the second part are measures. So these are deliberate decisions made by the government, separate from all those other pressures of, an ageing population and whatnot, that they just decide they're going to spend. And this is the problem. They have just spent and spent and spent. Why have they done this? Well, they love giving stuff away. It wins votes, and they have no controls. Previous governments, you put controls on your spending. They haven't done that. And so as money has come in, and we've had a bit of a windfall due to our commodities, right? So we sell more commodities, you get this windfall of money that comes in, not expected. They put their hand in the cookie jar, spend. That spend gets baked in to future budgets, and that is why they're either going after more debt or they're going after more taxes. And that's why.
You have spoken before, I think it was just following the economic roundtable, about the importance of having those fiscal rules, which the coalition had previously, and then Treasurer Jim Chalmers abolished that. And I guess to your point, you've just highlighted just how important it is to have rules in place. What would you be putting in if coalition come into government? What sort of rules would you be wanting to see?
So it's not just coalition, by the way. You can go all the way back to the Hawke government. So every single government has had a set of fiscal rules, so budget rules, that tries to tame how much you spend or how much tax you bring in.
Is that so your party keeps you accountable? Is that where the rules are, so that you can be held accountable quite easily? Is that the point of these?
Yeah, it's basically a government that says to the people it serves, look, it's your money, not ours. We recognise that. And so you can hold us to account by the following rules. We vow as a party not to tax any more than this, or not to spend any more than this. You put those rules in place. Now, it has also the secondary effect that it leads to discipline. Discipline on ministers, discipline on prime ministers, on treasurers, on cabinets, so that they don't spend too much, or they don't tax too much. Now, we haven't announced the rules that we'll be putting in place, but we are very clear that historically you've had rules. This is the first government since the Hawke era that's thrown it out. And you can see it in their budget, right? I mean, you've got a strategy, you can call it budget strategy, fiscal strategy. And every government usually has rules, and they're written in there. You can see the numbers, right? I mean, 23.9% tax to GDP was under the Morrison government, one of the rules. Right? When you look at Jim Chalmers' strategy, there are no numbers. No, it's just a word salad. I mean, it's just sort of thrown together. We've got objectives and missions and strategies, but there are no set rules. Now, families around Australia all have to have discipline because they know everything's going up. It's costing a lot. If you want to pay for the kids' education, the school books, the shoes, the clubs, you've got to watch your spending. This government has no rules in place, which is why it can just keep on spending, and that's what it is doing. So spending as a percentage of GDP has gone from 24% to 27%. It goes to the stat that you mentioned, right? So $160 billion extra. And they're just going to keep on going because they are refusing to adopt rules. Straight out discipline. If it's good enough for Australian families, it should be good enough for the government.
Can we go to the economic roundtable?
Yes.
So I watched this quite closely, and in all honesty, Ted, I really hoped so much that something really big and bold would have come out of it. But just something to address, the lagging productivity, or the fact that the private sector is not growing like it should be, and instead it's the non-market sector is where we're seeing the increase. But I just felt watching it, and to your point, Jaimie, it was literally, it felt like a fizzer. It felt like it was a really wasted opportunity. And I'd love to get your take, because you were in the room, and there was lots of stories coming out of there where you two had a bit of a moment. But I'd just love to get your thoughts of what you take away from that, and are we going to see any form of improvement off the back of this?
My main takeout is Albanese and Chalmers are no Hawke and Keating. They are not. And that leaves me even more down than how I felt before the round table. A bit like you, I agreed to go to the round table, and as a sign of good faith to say, you know what, after 3 years of not talking about productivity, which is really proxy for living standards, which have dropped so much, right? Productivity's gone backwards, like in reverse by over 5%. Big problem for our future. At long last, to the credit of the government, they came out and said, we've got a problem here. And so they invited me to the round table. I was very happy to go in the hope that we would genuinely deal with the big challenges the country faces. But that is not what happened. There weren't discussions about productivity. There was mainly discussions around how Labor can try to have a big government working with big superannuation funds and big unions to deliver on the Labor Party program. Now, that's not going to deliver productivity. There were some decent ideas that came up around the table. There really were.
I had to laugh at the one about the 4-day working week with the same pay.
Oh yes,
I had a little chuckle about that one.
Isn't that a crack at productivity?
It just goes to show that anybody having that discussion in that meeting hasn't actually used their wallet to employ people.
Well, this
Like,
just
honestly, how many of them have employed people?
And in fairness to a lot of the participants around the table, especially those in business, they weren't shaking pom-poms on that idea. But I mean, the only real concrete, actionable item that came out of it was regarding housing. And
that was going to be
it
my
was
next
freezing
question.
to the National Construction Code. Good idea. It was the coalition's idea.
Which you guys got mocked for.
Exactly.
Let's not forget that.
You know, we took that to the last election. Labor beat us up over it. And so, good idea, guys. That's at least one concrete idea that came out of the round table. But when it comes to how else you're going to drive productivity, how are you going to grow the economic pie? No, there's some good ideas on regulation, but they did not commit to specific time-bound targets to reduce regulations. So lots of talk, but no commitment. There was discussion around energy, but there was no commitment for them to analyse different pathways to ensure we've got the cheapest electricity grid. No, they refused to do that. There was lots of talk about the budget, and everybody recognised that the budget under Labor is not sustainable. Everybody, even the Treasurer, admitted that. But again, refused to adopt fiscal rules. So it was a bit of a love-in on recognising the problems. There was a lack of commitment to take real action. And the main thing that I found over time was just this belief on the part of Labor that government will be able to master plan everyone's life if it can get its hands on the money that people have through taxes or through their super savings.
That's another thing I heard you say not so long ago about Labor believe they know what's best for you. You know, I think you said they know how to spend your money, how to educate your kids, how to control your working environment, and the bottom line is we're letting them.
Exactly, which is why we have to fight. To be honest, this is exactly why we have to fight. Because if you think of your own kids, and I think of mine, think of all their mates, right? And I think our kids are probably around the same age, right? You think of all their little mates running around doing what they do. I want them to decide what sort of life they want to have. We need to give them the opportunity to pursue whatever it is they want to pursue in life. I do not believe that it is the role of government to determine what they should do. And this is why we need to have a system which is truly a liberal democracy that has a strong economy so that the next generation can lead whichever way they want this country to be. And at the moment, under this government, they are closing that down. They are saying government knows best. Well, government doesn't know best. The individual knows best. The family knows best. The local community knows best. And that's who we have to fight for. And that is our role right now as an opposition.
So one hurdle I think that the coalition are going to face is there was this recent article just highlighting the percentage of voters that currently receive government handouts, and it was 50% of the voting population subsidises in some cases majority of their income. And I read that and I thought, how on earth are we going to convince people that that's not the way forward? We can't subsidise our economy to success, but it's about trying to bring these people off whatever benefit it might be that they're receiving. How, as the coalition, do you convince people to not go down the subsidy path so that we can save money and go along a different trajectory?
So there's probably two parts to this in my mind. One is when it comes to welfare benefits, and another is when it comes to public spending in the economy. On welfare benefits, the best form of welfare is a job. And I believe that, which means the best thing we can do is grow the economy to ensure that we give people that opportunity. And when people can experience the fulfillment that comes with work, the freedom it gives them in their own lives, that is the single greatest gift that we could all give. And when I say a gift, it's not a gift of government. Our job is to provide the environment. And this sort of is a segue into the second part, right? The private sector. What we've seen under the Albanese government is just the public sector, the government sector, trying to do everything. And so about 80% of all the new jobs over the last few years
are public.
Or basically, non-market sector jobs. And so what that means is that government sector, if you like, is crowding out the private sector.
And it's just putting a Band-Aid on the fact that unemployment would be so low if they weren't doing that as well. So it just acts as a Band-Aid for a bigger problem.
It continues to be a Band-Aid and a very expensive Band-Aid, right? Because again, that takes you back to big debt, higher taxes, and lots of deficits running forward. And that is why the priority has to be to grow the private sector. You must grow the economic pie, rather than having a government as we do today that only wants to cut that pie up and redistribute it. That is not sustainable over the long term. You have to grow the pie. So they're the two aspects.
There was, just before you move on from that, there was just this really concerning story regarding people not wanting to have a job. So Drake's supermarket, so JP Drake, who owns this supermarket chain, said he's having to start hiring staff from Vanuatu because when he hires a local, an Australian, they get the role and then they say, oh, actually, sorry, I get paid more on Centrelink, so I'm not going to take the job. And that's why he's been forced to fly in people from overseas. And as he said, it's jobs like fruit picking or stacking shelves and, in his words, not the most glamorous of roles. But it just sort of highlighted that if you can get more on a Centrelink payment than what you can as, I'm pretty sure he said it was $33 an hour that he was offering these workers. That still seems like a very good salary, $33 an hour. But they think they get more on Centrelink. I felt like that's a huge problem just there in itself.
And again, this goes back to why it's so important. People see the value in work. And I don't believe that's an old-fashioned view. I really don't. Because I think people are at their happiest in life when they are doing things really productively. It's just human nature. If you're working hard, doing something you're good at and something you're passionate about, that is when you are at your peak, at your happiest, at your most fulfilled. As a society, that is what keeps a liberal democracy vibrant. And so there's still a long way to go. We have a government which is just wanting to have government control everything. We have the completely opposite view. We need to give the individual the opportunity. We need small businesses to thrive. We need entrepreneurs to have a go. Have a go and fail is fine too, by the way. Have a go, because that is the only way you're going to drive the economy moving forward. And in doing so, you actually have a far more fulfilled, happier population.
One of the things that we heard last week or possibly the week before, we met with Chris Ullman and we did an episode on energy, on energy. And one of the things he said that the issue Australia faces right now when we touched on productivity is he said you cannot have a high energy economy in terms of pricing and a high wage economy at the same time. It's just not possible. We cannot be competitive globally, and manufacturers and businesses, they can't operate if they're paying high wages and high energy. So as the coalition right now, you're obviously in a situation where you're trying to set platform to rebuild and put all your policies back together. Are you able to share with us some things that you would like to see that would help small business? What do you see as the biggest hurdles right now?
So can I firstly say Chris Uhlmann knows his stuff when it comes to energy. He really does, right? And as it's been said a million times by a lot of people, energy is the economy.
Yes.
Right. And so if you go back even the turn of the century, what you saw in Australia was, yes, we had high wages in Australia, but we had relatively low cost energy.
Yeah.
And that meant we were still able to maintain a whole bunch of sovereign capability, manufacturing and the like. The problem is we still want high wages in Australia. Absolutely we do. But the cost of energy has risen and risen. And what we've seen the last few years is, despite Labor saying it's going down, it's skyrocketing up.
Yeah.
And we are becoming less and less competitive.
Yeah.
And so one of the key things that we have to do, to answer your question then, is to focus on economic policies that helps lift all boats, helps for small business, helps all small businesses. As part of that, we have to get energy costs under control. It is going too high. And it doesn't matter whether you are the smallest business, whether you're just a one-person hole-in-the-wall cafe, or you are a smelter employing thousands. You are struggling because the basic costs are too high. Another thing that I think is strangling business is just straight red tape and regulation. I mean, we've had 3 years, 5,000 pieces of regulation introduced by the Albanese
I was trying to do the
government.
maths on this the other day, on how
This is
many people have to
ridiculous.
sign a day.
Yeah.
It's just out of control.
It's just like the
it's
time to
so
sign that
hard.
much documentation.
But this is it, Jaimie, right? So you go to the average business and you're talking to medium-sized businesses which are choosing not to put on an engineer or a tradie or one of the core functions in their business. Why? They have to employ somebody to just look after the compliance of paperwork. It's just making things more complicated. And this is at a time when we're trying to attract money to Australia. We're saying, here we are, safe haven. We've got fantastic institutions. We've got so many natural comparative advantages in this country, but we are making it more difficult because government is just tying everything up in red tape. Another thing that can lift all boats, help all companies of all shapes and sizes, if we allow the private sector to grow. And that's what it comes back to of a value set for a Liberal Party. We believe in freedom. We believe in opportunity. We believe in a fair go. We believe in the individual and the entrepreneur. And if we believe in those things, we've got to allow them to grow and get government out of the way. Not in some irresponsible way. I mean, of course, there's an important role for government, but it's basically trying to say to the Australian people, there's one side of politics that believes that you should be rewarded for your effort. And you should have maximum rights. With those rights come commensurate responsibilities, of course. But you and your family should pursue whatever path you wish to pursue. It's not for government to dictate to you, nor is it for government to get in your way.
How do you sell it though, Ted?
Well, by speaking to both of you is a good start. To be honest,
I mean,
right?
we saw at the last election though, I said to Jaimie all the time, the slogan on TV, he cuts, you pay. And I said to Jaimie, why aren't they coming back and saying, he spends, you pay? Because it's the exact same thing. They were trying to say Dutton was going to cut things and be responsible financially, whereas they're spending, but all it means is you're then paying for their spending. So I thought it was just such a stupid slogan. But yeah, how do you sell it without, I mean...
So right now, we've got to be honest and blunt in defining the problem that needs to be solved. And that is why right now, even in this conversation, I'm talking about stop the spending spree, grow the economic pie, because we have a job to do as an opposition. The first job is to hold the government to account, and that means we've got to lay out to the Australian people the problems that need to be solved. If you don't do that, then you're basically letting the government off the hook. And they make things up. I mean, there are atrocious lies in the last election from the Labor Party. And then when it came to Peter Dutton, they absolutely played the man. And it worked for them politically, which means the risk is, well, they get buoyed by that. So, well, there you go. That's the winning formula.
Yeah.
I'm the Labor Party.
Mediscare was their winning formula, and they did it again.
Exactly
and the
right.
Nuclear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we have to take on the lies head on.
Yeah.
But it also means we have to make sure we are being very clear about the problems to solve. And politically, you know what the good thing is? We don't have to tell any lies about that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the facts do the talking.
Yes.
It is atrocious. And I think the Australian people, even if the average Australian doesn't get excited by talking economics, the average Australian knows something is deeply wrong.
Yeah.
Right? When things just keep going up in terms of prices and life isn't getting easier, I think the average Australian knows we are going in the wrong direction. It's our job as a Liberal Party, as a coalition, to communicate what is going wrong. Why? Why will Labor go after more taxes? It's because they keep spending, because they want to control people's lives. And we need to ram this home, because that's the only way then phase 2, you can actually sell your solutions to solve that problem.
Ted, one thing that was coming up all through the election and now very much so is the topic about housing and how it's the great Australian dream of owning a home, and it is simply just that, a dream, in that so many young people, they've lost that aspiration of wanting to even think about buying a home because they just can't do it. Yeah. And I know that the Labor government have set out that target of building 1.2 million homes over 5 years, and I keep trying to have a look, Ted. I watch Question Time, I read a lot of articles, and I'm trying to just see how many have been built for this 1.2 million. I know the Treasury have said they're not going to be able to hit that target, but how many are you aware of have been built? But also just talk to us about the situation of the housing market within Australia.
So in terms of how many have been built, we've asked the Labor Party. They can't nominate one address. So, I mean, just one. Like just name one.
Give us a street.
It's a street, a number.
Suburb. Yeah.
You know, we'll do a drive-by and go, good on you guys, you built one.
Yeah.
To date, they haven't done that. So let's wait and see. Hopefully, maybe as a result of this podcast, they might come up with a few addresses. But it's a serious problem, right? Because you do have just generations now losing hope. And it's always been the Aussie dream.
Yeah.
You know, you want to have your own home, and for so many Australians, you know, your own family to be in that home, and that's life. And as a country, we've been able to help people realise that dream, but it's quickly slipping away. And Labor had come in and they'd promised the Australian people they'd build 1.2 million homes, and it's just not happening. I mean, even the Property Council of Australia giving the government the benefit of the doubt, so they're going to be about 460,000 homes short. And this is a huge problem, right? Because you've got an enormous boom we've seen in population through immigration. You had about 1 million people over 2 years come in. And you've had the construction sector. We talked about productivity before.
Yes.
Like the construction sector has been a horror story. And that's largely due to the CFMEU, the unions. And you just have not seen the supply of more houses, of more homes, apartments. Now, we're not talking about going back to the 50s, right? I mean, there are different ways of living now. And so it's not like we've got to sort of be trying to get Australia back the way it was with our grandparents. We've got to build it for our grandkids. But a clear line of sight between those generations is a love of family and a desire, an aspiration to own your own patch of dirt or your own apartment, right? Now, that is just disappearing because this government is not focusing on the supply side of the equation. And therefore, it's only going to continue to get more difficult. The unions are their masters, so they're never really going to...
How do you get rid of them, though? Like, one of the things I was going to say before when Jaimie was talking about this situation with housing is we've already touched on the economic roundtable, and I saw the week of the roundtable meeting, Joe Hildebrand held his own I think with like 8 people.
In the Daily Tele.
Yeah, and he wrote an article about it, and I watched the videos of it, and I just was very interested because they were just everyday Aussies that are business owners. But one
I
of
should
them,
have left the round table.
I
Jim
joined
Chalmers
that
hat
one.
and
Yeah,
gone and just watched the.
to go to that one.
Yeah, should have.
But what I found really interesting, and I'm going to ask you how accurate this is that one of the gentlemen in his economic roundtable was a man who's a builder and has been a builder his whole life. He probably mid-50s and has a son now that is, I don't know, of apprentice working age, maybe late teens, early 20s. And he's saying to his son, don't become a builder, like don't do it. And he said all his career, his working life, they used to build a house in 9 months. And he said in Australia now, you can't build a house in under maybe 18 months to 2 years. That is a serious issue. And that's not an immigration problem. That's as you say, a productivity problem,
Yes.
a supply problem, a
Yes.
red tape problem.
Yes.
So how do you get rid of the CFMEU? Like if Coalition were in power, how do you actually cut down on all the tape and get the chain roll, all of it rolling again?
Yeah, so there's a few things. I think that the main thing is to ensure you're focusing on supply. Mm-hmm. And then within supply, there's a whole bunch of problems that need to be solved. Not all of those are federal government controlled issues, but the federal government can influence it. Mm-hmm. And so there are elements which touch on local councils and state governments in terms of land supply, in terms of zonal issues, in terms of stamp duties, in terms of other regulatory barriers. And so regulation is the starting point. There are way too many regulatory barriers.
Yeah, this gentleman said that there are 3 or 4 certification that is the same thing, like it's duplicates.
And one of the issues, which is why Labor have finally agreed to freeze the construction code, is you've got somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 pages of a code that if you're a middle-sized developer trying to build a small block of apartments, you've got to wade through the most enormous amount of paperwork, and this just slows things down. And if you think of technological developments, you think of modular housing,
You'd think it is all speeding up.
you would think things would be going the other way, but they are not. And so again, this just comes down to a regulatory system which is not working. You have a construction union, the CFMEU, which really has been corrupted. And the way that they have been doing the economics has only just made things more expensive, harder to get jobs done, and it's just blowing things out of reach for the everyday Australian. Now, all of this, of course, just goes together, and it gets harder and harder, but it has to be a national priority. And unfortunately, what we are seeing from the Albanese government, they've set a target, they've sold the target, but they don't have an implementation plan to get there. And who loses from that? Everyday Australians. Everyday Australians just want to find a place to live, right? And unfortunately, I don't have much hope that's going to get better under the current government.
And have you given yourselves a timeline on selling the solutions? And the reason why I ask that is I felt as though at the last election, we didn't give ourselves enough time to sell our messages to the voters. And even for things like nuclear, we didn't take the voters on the journey with us. And so I always get nervous when I hear Susan Lee and even yourself at the Menzies Institute, where we talk about that we've got the time to get the policies right. But then in my head, I'm like, we don't have time. We don't have time. We've really got to get out there. We need to be a strong opposition.
I reckon
we don't have time.
Yeah, I reckon your critique of the last election is absolutely fair. Is absolutely fair.
Yeah.
And I think we've all learnt from that.
Yeah.
Which means we've got to be very strategic about when we release things.
Yeah.
And we can't leave it too late because we do have to take people.
It's filtering down too. This isn't just federal coalition or federal Liberal Party, federal coalition. It's New South Wales, it's state Liberal Party. I saw this weekend the Young Liberals released a reel. I'm not sure if you've seen it, a video where it was like, come join us. And it had heaps of them walking through a park saying all the reasons why they're proud to be Young Liberals and ambitious Australians and wanting, to mould our future. And if you're passionate about a future Australia, come join us. And it was this invitation to step in and join them. And then I went straight to the comments. And then it was like, yeah, but what do you believe in? What's your policy? Will you drop net zero? Like, they just kind of got hammered with questions. And I thought, this is exactly as Liberals, whether you're a Young Liberal, a New South Wales Liberal, a federal Liberal, the public are just hammering, but what do you believe in? Not what do you believe in values. Where's the policy? So I think time is running out. People are getting frustrated. And
I see that happening. I think it's a fair critique. I think it's a particularly fair critique when it comes from our own supporters. Because our own supporters were impacted by the last federal election. So much as an MP you are, well, there are so many people out there who've been rooting for us. And they want us to be able to get Australia out of the mess. And so I don't blame them for that anxiety, if you like. I can just give the assurance the work is absolutely being done, and we've learned some lessons, some big lessons from the last campaign, and one of those lessons is not to be leaving policy too late.
And I guess, Ted, in all of this that we have been spoken about, there's certainly one positive thing about the economic horror story is that it's never too late to turn things around. And the coalition, are they going to be the party to do that?
100%. 100%. And there is, to be honest, no other party that can do that. And we have to have the courage to speak the truth. And sometimes that might be difficult, but you do need that. And if you go into public life for the right reasons, well, you've got an obligation. And to be elected as a parliamentarian, it truly is an honour. But you're wasting your time if you're not going to take on the big challenges and have the courage to tackle them front on. And that's what we have to do. Last term of government, I had the energy portfolio, and we, talking nuclear, a lot of people said you shouldn't. But we did that. And that was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to fight for. A new term now, but we can't do anything other than deliver on our convictions and have the courage to go forward. It doesn't mean you have to be crazy and try to be big macho stuff, but Australia is going in such a dangerous direction. We can't just, tweak things and get it back on track. There needs to be a fundamental shift across multiple portfolio areas, and that is going to require unity and is going to require conviction and courage. And the only party that will be able to do that is the Liberal Party, and of course that will be together with the Nationals and Coalition.
Well, Ted, thank you so much.
No,
we really
you.
appreciate your time today. You've got a big job ahead of you.
Indeed.
But we believe you can do it.
Well, we're excited by it, believe it or not. We're excited by it, so
Woohoo.
Love it.
let's get into it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the JJ Podcast.